I have as my Episcopal motto, the motto of late Bishop John McGann, to serve the Lord with gladness. So that's what I try to do in my ministry as the bishop. And Tommy does it every day here at Kellenberg and every place that he goes.
They are a family, further forged in faith. From two boys playing backyard games in Lynbrook to two men spreading the word of God at Kellenberg Memorial and across the globe in the Solomon Islands. The story of the Cardone brothers is one to be shared and celebrated. Welcome to The Flight of the Firebirds, a Kellenberg Memorial podcast. I'm John Gaffney, class of 26. I'm joined now by Father Tom Cardone, our school chaplain here at Kellenberg Memorial.
Very happy to be with you.
And Archbishop Chris Cardone of Honiara.
John, great to be with you today.
Archbishop, it's great to have you back here on Long Island. I understand that this time around it's just for a short visit. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you're heading next.
I have an opportunity to visit my dad, who's age 96 and a half, and to visit with my family. And this evening, I'll be on my way to Rome for the canonization of our first local saint on Mission Sunday.
Beautiful. So, but this is your home. This is where it all started. So, Father Tom, what was it like growing up on Long Island? Maybe you could give us some stories of how the Cardone household went.
We had a normal kind of family household. We lived on a street called Cherry Lane, which was a small street that had lots and lots of young people. And we were always surrounded in a very warm community. We went to St. Raymond's School. We also have two sisters, Donna and Nancy. And my mom used to say, as we were growing up and even as religious, that she had two saints and two sinners, but she never said who was who.
I also went to St. Raymond's, so I remember Archbishop coming to visit growing up, and we had Father Pio and Father Michael, two priests of the Solomon Islands growing up. So, and then Father, you went to St. Raymond's, and then you're the older brother. So how did you make your decision for high school?
I really wasn't that sure. It was funny is I applied to Chaminade, I applied to the Diocesan Seminary, St. Pius, and I really didn't think I would get into Chaminade. And I can still remember in 8th grade, my mom coming to the parking lot, which was recess at St. Raymond's, and saying, you got accepted to Chaminade, you got accepted to Chaminade. I was floored. I never had a good sense of where I fit academically. And one thing that helped draw me into Chaminade was that there was a girl in my class named Mary Ellen, and her dad was in Chaminade's first graduating class. And I think that was one of the things that sort of drew me to choose Chaminade. He said, you got to go. It's going to be a great experience. And when I went to Chaminade from St. Raymond's, I only went with 3 other guys. And that was all who were accepted. It was just a small group. And we had a great time together.
So then 3 years later, Archbishop, it's your time to go to high school. And did you decide to follow in the footsteps?
I actually thought that I would go to St. Pius, which was the high school seminary at the time, not too far from here. And my mother said, oh, it'd be easier if you and Tommy are in the same school. And I didn't have any great strong desire to go either place. So I was happy to go to Chaminade. And I will say that it was 4 very happy years of my life.
So our last podcast talked about students that are in the building and they're also siblings. So Father, when you were a senior, Archbishop was a freshman. So did you guys see each other in the hallway at all, or?
From time to time, but not that we saw each other a lot. I just don't remember seeing like a lot of Chris, okay? Yeah. Went to school together, but, it's funny. And Chaminade wasn't that big then, but, people who were on one floor sort of stayed together. And I think that's the way it was.
Right. I think my biggest recollection was when Tommy joined the Marianists. We did not see him all that often, but when we had a school mass, the Marianist young brothers, who we used to call the baby brothers, they would attend the school mass, and it was always a chance to see Tom and also to see the other young guys. One of my classmates, Mike McAward, also became a Marianist, so we had a nice experience growing up in St. Raymond's. I always say the best parish in the diocese. And I also have to always mention that we had the IHM sisters, the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters from Scranton, who were very important in our vocation. They probably helped to give us our first Marian influence because they were dedicated to Our Lady. And when we went to school there, they wore a beautiful blue and white habit. And I always say they looked like the Blessed Mother. But we had great influence in our schooling and growing up with, good Catholic family household.
The Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters were absolutely wonderful. Sometimes people talk about in the old days, difficult experiences with sisters in schools. And it wasn't like that at all. We had a real good group of sisters. We didn't realize how young they were until we probably hit college, but they were involved in our lives, and they really gave us a very fine faith formation. And they were also wonderful, like in the arts. The IHM sisters were great with music and art and plays and chorus and all that. Yeah. They really gave another dimension to the school. And to this day, Chris and I are both in touch with Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters.
Yeah. I could third that. I still have a relationship with the 3 nuns who taught me as Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters. So then you're 4 years, you were at Chaminade, and then you decide to go to college. Father Tom is already a Marianist. So where do you decide to go?
People always ask me that question, and I always say I knew I didn't want to teach high school for the rest of my life. I taught CCD, religious education at Corpus Christi Parish for 4 years, and I liked teaching, but I just never saw myself as a brother. And early on, I always was interested in reading Mary Knoll magazine, which was the mission magazine, and I always, thought that if God was calling me to do lay missionary work or priestly work, that I would do missionary work overseas.
So you decided on Providence, right?
Right. I only applied to 3 colleges. In those days, people only applied to 3 or 4 schools. I applied to Providence, which was run by the Dominicans. I applied to Villanova, run by the Augustinians, where Pope Leo went to school. And then I had a sister at Boston College. I applied to Boston. I often wondered, when I went up to Providence, I knew that I would be happy there, and I never considered seriously Villanova or Boston.
So you go to Providence, and the Dominicans there were influential to you?
Right. They were very influential. I began as a business major thinking that I would join the Long Island army of people working in Manhattan or Wall Street or something to do in the business world. And early on, I saw the Dominicans in prayer, in the classroom, in the various activities, and I was attracted to the Dominican way of religious life.
So then you joined the Dominicans, Fathers in the Marianists. So, Father, how is it like being in 2 different orders? Is it like a extra family, or?
It's definitely like extra family, because the brothers that I live with are very close with Chris, and a lot of the people that were in formation with Chris, I'm still very friendly with. We still know each other, but it's sort of a funny twist. I'm Thomas Aquinas, and Chris always said what? It's sort of
I always
comical.
say that Tom has the Dominican name, St. Thomas Aquinas, the great Dominican. He should have been the Dominican, and he's the Holy One. He should really be the Archbishop in the family as well.
You join the Dominicans, you're ordained, and then it comes time for your first assignment. You were supposed to be sent.
Right. I was actually assigned to go to Pakistan, and I applied for a visa 3 times, and I got rejected. And I was sent to Cincinnati, Ohio. And interestingly, I was assigned to the priory there, where our vice president was baptized. J.D. Vance was baptized and evangelized by the Dominicans at St. Gertrude's Parish. So I had that great honor to be serving there. And then the Australian Dominican friars, they asked for 2 Dominican priests to go to the Solomon Islands for 3 years. So that's how I initially went there. And then they asked me to spend 3 more years and 3 more years and 3 more years. And then in 2001, I was appointed bishop. So then you're under the Pope, and the Pope still has me there in the Solomons.
36 years later. So Father Tom, what was it like when you found out that your brother was being sent to the Solomon Islands? Were you?
Oh, very happy for him, because he always wanted to be a missionary. And again, I didn't really know that much about the Solomon Islands. And I don't think most of our family knew that much about the Solomon Islands, except the Battle of Guadalcanal that we studied. We were in, sophomore history in high school. I'm not sure. And we knew it was going to be a place where he was going to be happy. And he went with an older priest that we knew, who was a wonderful man. And I think that was like, at least for our mom and dad, okay, he's with someone who's solid, experienced, almost like some of the old guys we had at St. Raymond's.
Right.
And then did you take a plane there? And how was it like when you first arrived?
Right. You're up in the air for almost 24 hours on 3 different planes, and then I had to take a boat ride to get to my final destination. And I can honestly say that from the minute that I arrived, I was happy. It was a new culture, new food, new people, everything new. I was 9,000 miles away from home. There was no internet at that time. There was no regular phone service. So I relied on writing letters, which people don't seem to do nowadays. But I can honestly say that from the beginning, I felt happy there, and I was happy to stay there as long as God wanted me to stay there. I had no idea I would stay there for most of my adult life, but in reflection, I'm happy that God sent me there, and it continues to be a good, positive experience.
Now, Father, Archbishop spoke about it for a little bit, but how is it like communicating? Your dad and mom and you were both still on Long Island, and the Archbishop's on the complete other side of the world.
We would send letters. Okay.
Yeah.
I still have 3 boxes of handwritten letters that Chris sent to me from the beginning. I even have a postcard that he sent. He had arrived in Honiara and still was clueless as to what direction and where they were going. And I had it in a book, and I pulled this out. I said, oh my gosh, Chris just arrives in Honiara. And still with, I'm looking forward to what Gizo's going to be like. And, but I still have 3 boxes of letters. I still have every email that he sent saved in a file. And it was a great story because it forced Chris to become a really good writer, because he would have to describe what it was like and where it was like. And I remember when one of the places where we first lived, there was like a cyclone fence around the small hut to keep the animals out, and like describing all this stuff. And like, it's not like Long Island at all.
Archbishop is there. Now, what are the schools like? What are the priests like? What's the community down there?
The people are Melanesian people, so they're dark-skinned people. And as I mentioned in my homily today, up until about 1920, there were headhunters and cannibals in that area. There was very intense tribal fighting. So the gospel really put an end to tribal wars, gave them peace, also brought health and education, which was not present at that time. So coming to the Solomons in 1989, the church is still involved in health and education, and people are happy to be Christians, and they're happy to receive the good news of the gospel.
Now, I'm not sure what year it was. Were you there when Pope John Paul II visited the Solomon Islands?
I was not. He went in 1984,
Okay.
So I was still in the seminary at that time. But people still remember May 9th, 1984, the time when the Pope arrived in the Solomon Islands. And he also, when he arrived, he was a young Pope at that time. He was like 58 years old. He came out of the plane, he laid down on the ground, and he kissed the ground at the airfield. And people saw that as him, loving and respecting the people and the culture there. So
I know Brother Roger tells a great story that he was able, when he was there, to sleep in the same bedroom as John Paul II.
Right. And same with Brother Patrick Cahill. He stayed in the same room where Pope St. John Paul II stayed.
So, Archbishop Chris, in the United States, normally when the Pope makes someone a bishop, the nuncio will call them and let them know. So in 2001, when you became a bishop, how did that happen for you?
Well, I was in a parish called Holy Rosary, in a place the furthest you could get from the diocesan headquarters, and the bishop sent me a radio message to bring my passport and to come to the diocesan headquarters. Then I had to take 2 planes to get to Papua New Guinea, where the nuncio lives. And the Papua New Guinea, when I got to Papua New Guinea, the nuncio told me that I was appointed auxiliary bishop in Gizo Diocese. So I had to go all the way to Papua New Guinea to get the news.
That's amazing. Father Tom, how did you find out, and your parents, how did they?
Chris called me, okay, and he was like, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, okay, what? And I'm like, I was just named a bishop. you were? He says, yeah. I said, well, where are you? And he said, I'm in Papua New Guinea. I said, there? I mean, it was like, everything was just like so surprising.
Right.
And I remember him saying after he said yes, all of a sudden the nuncio called a tailor in and they started measuring him
Right.
for robes and stuff like that. And I'm like, it was like one-stop shopping. And he says, but it's not going to be announced till I forget when. But you can't tell anybody yet. And, you know, he called mom and dad and like we were all like, oh my gosh. And then he said, looks like we're going to the Solomon Islands.
So now it's been 24 years. You served in 3 different dioceses, right?
Right. We have 3 dioceses in the Solomons. There's 900 islands. People live on 300 of those islands. And the 3 dioceses each cover about 100 islands. So I was auxiliary bishop in the Western Diocese for 3 years. And then I got moved to the Eastern Diocese where I was diocesan bishop for 12 years. And then this is my 9th year as the Archbishop.
So this past week, I had the opportunity to go to New York, and Cardinal O'Malley, he kind of spoke about the way we're living in society. We're in a spiritual Alzheimer's, that we're forgetting what matters. And in the Solomon Islands, that seems to not be the case. So how's prayer life there?
Right. Brother Tim Driscoll, who you know, the Marianist, he came to visit one time and he said, the Solomons is like the church in the Acts of the Apostles, the early church, praying together, working together, and building up the church. Priests, religious, sisters, everybody working together. So we have the great blessing that it's like the church would have been in Rockville Center Diocese, let's say in the 50s and the 60s when the bishops were opening schools and parishes and convents. So we're kind of in that situation right now. We're opening parishes, we're opening schools. Last month I opened a new convent in a parish called Christ the King. So it's nice to be in a place where people will say that the church is the most important part of their lives.
That's amazing. Now, Father Tom, you had the opportunity to visit the Solomon Islands. What was your witness down there?
Oh, absolutely amazing in terms of faith. I remember once I was there for the month of December or so, and Chris dropped me off on some rock. We were in a boat, and he said, all right, someone's going to pick you up, okay, and bring you to, I think it was Nukaloko was the church, and everything will be set, and you're going to say mass, and you're going to do some baptisms and whatever else they need, and you're going to probably have to anoint some people. So meanwhile, I'm left on this rock. He takes off to go to another church, and, you know, maybe a half hour later, this boat comes and, you know, oh, Father Thomas. I'm like, yeah. He says, we're taking you. I said, oh, good. I was wondering. I've been waiting. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And again, packed church, faithful people, and I'm just about to read the gospel, and all of a sudden, everything shakes, literally. And I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, earthquake. So, oh, thank you. Okay, I had no idea. And we had a little earthquake.
He thought it was the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, it was so funny. It was like, it was Luke's gospel. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like shaking of the Acts of the Apostles. And afterwards, I did a whole bunch of baptisms. And, you know, in the baptism rite, they say, what name do you give your child? And I'll never forget this one couple goes, Helen. I said, no, that's my mother's name. That's our mother's name. She says, named after your mother, because our mother had recently passed away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got very emotional. I'm like, I'm naming this kid, I'm baptizing this kid after my mother. Here goes. And then afterwards, like nobody goes home. So like after Mass, like there was food and entertainment and everything else. It's very rooted in community. And I think I'll never forget that. I mean, the prayer life, the community life, and it was like in a, what do you call those wood churches? The huts. It was like a big hut, the church. It wasn't fancy by any means, but it didn't have to be fancy. And people sat on benches that were like 6 inches off the ground, and the kids were all over the place on the floor, and everybody listens. Yeah. And they all sing.
And my first experience with the Cardone brothers actually was before I was born. It was my sister's baptism was the day of your mom's funeral. And as all the priests and bishops walked out, they blessed my sister. So my parents cherished that and tell the story every once in a while. So now You've been there for 36 years, right?
Right.
And how has it changed since you first arrived?
Many changes. When I first went there, it's a country of about 800,000 people. There were only 6 secondary schools in the whole country. And now we have about 200 secondary schools. So education and health have developed. And then when I first went there, there was only 10 native local Solomon priests and 50 missionary priests. Now, 35 years later, we have 75 local Solomon priests and only 14 missionary priests. And we have our own seminary since 1995, and we have 43 students in the major seminary, and we only have 38 parishes. And like the church in the United States in the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, there were many vocations, and we have the blessing of vocations. Every morning at the cathedral, I have the first Mass, which is at 10 minutes past 6 every morning. There's always 25 sisters that come to that early morning Mass, and they wear their beautiful blue and white habit of the Daughters of Mary Immaculate, the local congregation.
That's beautiful. So talking about vocations, maybe someone's listening or they heard your homily at Mass this morning. What is your message for them if they think maybe they'll become a missionary like you or maybe a teacher like you, Father Tom?
I always tell them they have to pray, go to Mass. If you go to Mass, the Lord will definitely speak to your heart. And that's where a vocation comes from, God speaking from his heart to your heart. And to pray, and also to speak to priests and religious about what you think God is calling you to do.
Another thing I would add to that is one of the things that's been exceptionally rich here at Kellenberg Memorial, and also in the local church right now, is Eucharistic adoration. And we have Eucharistic adoration on a lot of programs and retreats, but each month we have what's called XLT. And when we had it last month, we had almost 500 people there. And to see people in prayer, vocations is like a bakery. People online, we get some of our alumni priests to come back to help hear confessions. And I often think that when you're focused on Jesus in the Eucharist and a person opens their hearts and their ears, they will hear a call. In a lot of cases, it could be a call to religious life, to priesthood. In other cases, it could be to the sacrament of marriage, which is also suffering in our country. Right? Marriage is so important. Marriage is so sacred. Family life is so important and so sacred that I often thought that if marriage picked up and family life picked up, that would also help the vocation challenge right now.
And what's one thing that you both would like to share about your brother that we might not know?
That's a tough one. I think, like generally speaking, a lot of stuff. But one thing like about Chris that, it's not a great secret or anything, but he's very much like our maternal grandfather. Okay. And they live down the block from us. We were lucky because on our block were my mom's mother and father. 2 blocks over was my mother's sister and her family that we're still very close to this day. He's almost like a carbon copy. Our grandfather was an outdoorsman, a gardener, a tailor, a fisherman, came from Noank, Connecticut, originally born in Italy. And Chris has a lot of his qualities.
I always say that Tommy is the best priest on Long Island, meaning that there's a lot of great priests on Long Island and great bishops, but Tommy will do your wedding, he will do your baptism, he'll do your grandmother's funeral. He's bringing Christ to so many people through the sacraments and especially through important celebrations like weddings, baptisms, funerals, anointing of the sick. He's really bringing Christ to so many people. And I always say that Tommy is the smiling priest on Long Island. You never see Tommy cross. You never see him impatient. He's really the guy. I have as my Episcopal motto, the motto of late Bishop John McGann, to serve the Lord with gladness. So that's what I try to do in my ministry as the bishop. And Tommy does it every day here at Kellenberg and every place that he goes.
One more thing I want to add to that too is that our mom and dad and our grandparents and our family was very welcoming, relational, exceptionally family oriented. And I think that it touched both of us in similar ways, maybe also in different ways. But I think a lot really came from our mom and dad, who were absolutely amazing. And, you see my dad now, 96 and a half, going strong, but he was a very good paternal figure. And one thing a lot of people, most people don't know, is that his brother passed away in his 40s, and my father watched over my two cousins like a hawk to this very day, and was with them every step of the way. And I think that also inspired us to you always reaching out to people. And it doesn't matter who, when, where, what kind of situation. And that's the kind of family we came from.
So as you were saying, your parents were so influential in the beginning of your vocation and ministry. What is it like now, Archbishop, when you're back, the stories that tell at the dinner table?
Well, we come from an Italian-American family, and an Italian-American family, everything revolves around food, faith, and family. So I'm home just for 9 days. We've gone out to dinner as a family with Father Tom, my sisters, and my dad. When I'm home, usually the last night is always a family pizza party. And I always say, if people ask me, what do you want to have if you come over for dinner, or what's your favorite food? I always say pizza is the best food on Long Island. So we had our family pizza party last night. Father Tom was there, classmates from Chaminade and kids that I knew from growing up were there. And as my dad, has done his whole life, their house has always been open to people. I can tell them I'm bringing 10 people or 20 people or 30 people, and they'll always smile. So that's a great thing.
In our family, the most important thing was, it didn't matter what you ate, but it just mattered that you were together. And that's so, so important. Being together, being one, whether Chris said, whether it's 20 or 30 people. When they had the big house in the old days, sometimes it was 40 and 50 and 60 people that last night.
Yeah.
And I can remember on many occasions going back to the pizza place, getting more pizzas and bringing them in. But being together, the Pope's motto right now, in the one we are one, and that's a very beautiful motto. Being one as family, being one in faith, being one in community, whether it's the Marianist community, the Kellenberg community, the Dominican community, the Solomon Island community, but we always strive to be one.
Archbishop, before we end, what is a message you would like to share with the Kellenberg students, family, parents?
We're in the year of hope, and it's a great theme that late Pope Francis gave us. And I think we need to know that God is in charge. God will always be with the church, even if there are rough seas in life, even if there are struggles, trials, temptations, that God is with us, and God wants us to be where he is, and that is in heaven.
Bishop Chris, we wish you safe travels to Rome and back to the Solomon Islands. We'll be praying for you. Thank you, Father Tom, for being with us today. And I'm John Gaffney, and this is The Flight of the Firebirds.